Good evening, everyone. I have to first begin by thanking the Bangalore International Center for creating this platform. They've always supported uh, the initiatives to explore caste. The contemporary in Indian history from a philatelic perspective. So this is the third exhibition on. Yeah. So this is the third exhibition on contemporary India using philatelic archive. I'm going to take about 5 to 6 minutes, maybe a little more, just to introduce the importance of the philatelic archive to understand contemporary India. Now, let me begin by saying that I'm not trying to, I'm trying to read them as historical documents, but that is not a reading that I am imposing. The postal department itself believes that stamps and postal products are, are historical documents, but then still okay, but then why should we be interested in them? We should be interested in the postal archive because by 1960s already, 3 lakh villages were, covered by the postal department every day, and 6 lakh villages were covered at least once in a week. Do we not want to know what were the images that the government of India, what were the images that the government of India wanted 3 lakh villages to see every day? This was the single largest advertisement platform available to the government of India. Post offices were the places where most people would because it was already the largest banking institution in the country. It was also one of the largest life insurers. So postal department had a very wide footprint. Now, in fact, I should add that postal department. The number of post offices grew much faster than the number of schools, primary schools, and number of branches. So for a considerable period, it was not only the mainstay of communication, but also one of the most important institutions of the state with which most people came contact with. Now. Specifically about the exhibition that we have on view now, I would like to tell you that a very large proportion of the material shown here is from Western India. Now this is because somehow for historical and climatic reasons, the postal material from Western India was well preserved. So we get more of that. So my job as a curator is to ensure that in this skewed sample, I go back and reweigh the sample and give you a more balanced picture. Now because it is focused on most material is from Western India, Hindi, Gujarati, Marathi are overrepresented in the archive, right? And I should also note that we need to look at the kind of people who are engaged in preserving this. So there's a very large number of actors involved, right? So dealers, philatelists, and common people, everybody plays a part here. A large part of the archive, has correspondence of people from the traditionally upper caste communities, right? So it's only from the late 60s, 70s that we see more of material, pertaining to the traditionally lower caste communities. So again, my job as a curator is to ensure that I reweigh the sample. I've received a skewed sample, and so I have to go back in time and reweigh that sample. Now, after I do this reweighing, what exactly can I explore from this? Because I'm not going to speak about the specifics. I'm going to talk about the way we can use the postal archive, and then Professor Gopal Guru will look at the specifics of the issues. So first of all, the postal archive gives you the ability to zoom in and zoom out. You can go from the correspondence of individuals to hierarchies to jati and awareness. So it gives you 4 levels of aggregation. It also gives you multiple shades. So to jati as a type, a quality, to jati as a scripturally sanctioned collective, right? It gives you, it offers you a comparative perspective. So 1956, the government of India says, ask not, tell not, think not, ask. And then there's this postcard which says that we have to, we have been assigned certain responsibilities in Bhagavad Gita as per caste, divisions, right? So at the same time, people getting these two messages. Right? Or you can compare Thakkar Bapa and Ambedkar. You could compare Mahatma Gandhi and Ambedkar. Right? So it gives you a comparative perspective. But it's not only about looking at the postal material. You can also look at the way stamps of postal products are released. So on the left, you have the Chaitya Bhumi stamp release. Very few people. Whereas on the right, you have the Diksha Bhumi stamp release, where you have the whole entire cabinet on the stage. These two your stamp release functions give you, help you appreciate the difference in styles of political parties. The Congress party issued a stamp without much fanfare maybe, but here you see the whole government coming out and saying that we own Dr. Ambedkar, that we are part of that legacy, that they want to claim that legacy. Or look at, the production from Delhi and from the grassroots. So the postal archive gives you, a lot, and as I mentioned in the walkthrough earlier, a lot of communities or organizations for which you find no trace in conventional archives, they are found in the postal archives. So it's an extraordinarily rich archive, and which has not been exploited to understand contemporary India. It's an archive which, see, the postal department was played the role of a shopping hall or a community center at that time. So the government has to distribute, anti-malaria tablets. So they go through postal department. The government has to, distribute life insurance. It goes through postal department. The government has to distribute pension to postal banks. Election material, it goes to the postal department. The census cannot be conducted without the intermediation of the post department. So this is a department which was central to a lot of government functions. In 1960, late 60s, when the government launched the family planning program, it placed 1 lakh family planning symbols outside 1 lakh post offices. There was no other place where you could have, presented his new message. So I'd like to conclude by saying that we need to take the postal archive much more seriously. It's a very rich archive, and which should be explored to understand contemporary India. It will not really change our understanding, but it will add new shades to some of the existing conclusions, and it will add new. And it will also bring into account the views of very marginal communities, small communities, which are not featured in national level archives. So I'll conclude with this and invite Professor Gopal Guru to share his views. I'll just.
I must thank the organizers of this exhibition for inviting me to speak to you and reflect upon the exhibition that Vikas has so innovatively and laboriously put together. I must especially thank the Bangalore International Center for providing the space for such a for such offbeat program. How can one really imagine that you can learn the very career of caste through postal department? You just can't imagine. I have not imagined caste being actually thought about through the post and telegraph department, both during the colonial period and post-independent period. We have learned about caste in social science literature, humanities, and not so much philosophy, but social sciences, history, humanity disciplines. But this is something very new, Vikas, so I must really express my appreciation for your effort that you have been doing. This is for the second time I'm speaking. First time I spoke in Delhi, now in Bangalore. And thanks Shanta Kumar for making it possible to give this place to such an innovative initiative. I have already made some points while we were actually walking through, but I would like to raise some points, and I seek some answers from you. First question that comes to my mind is that why is that the British people who are controlling telecommunications resources did not take any objection to this correspondence going on the basis of caste? Was it less harmful to them? Was it a kind of an innocuous social practice? People are freely corresponding with each other across time and space. Why did British people tolerate? Because they are the ones who actually devised telegraphs in 1853, telegram and postal in 1850s. They actually devised this to control the subject population, isn't it? If that was the motivation behind imperialist design, why people felt so free to correspond on this question of caste? Because it was not threatening them directly. So this point. Second point, why is that people felt suddenly relieved to communicate imagination through their own caste window by using print media, printing? The background is this, that before the pre-colonial period, in the pre-colonial period actually, what was the movement? What was the frequency of transaction, people going from one place to another place? No railways, no communication. What was actually the voyage was basically on foot, tirtha yatra, going from one place to another place. That was one. And who was going? Who was free to go? Was an untouchable free to go from here to Banaras? I have no idea. Just find out. But my imagination shows that, look here, the very body, impure body, can't directly venture to go into the public space. It can venture into the public space only at its own cost. So, but therefore, I think Ravidas went from Banaras to Chittorgarh. How? To meet the Maharani. She was very nice to him. I mean, this also, the constraining moments before the colonial adventure in terms of communication. Now, post-colonial, there is this was really bad. And somebody says, the train went through the land and the mountains like a knife going through the butter cake. But railways did wonders. So, for the first time you find that movements become easy and you also feel free to write to each other. Now, this is the second point. The third point is what role did the communication system play in terms of making people free from casteism, and also it helped people to consolidate casteism. I have done some work. I mean, Telegram hasn't figured in this. Other devices figured. But I am going to argue that Telegram played an important role in consolidation of the caste order. And I have found out from the autobiographical details of some people who are going to London. Going to London through sea was, it was not permissible, according to Manu Dharma Shastra. Some people sneaked out and went. But then, when they found, the families found that they were actually traveling, they were on the boat, they sent the telegram and asking the person to come back immediately. Immediately, under quotes. My question is, I am not able to figure out, why a telegram? Telegram shorten the speed. The ordinary letter will take 2 to 3 months to get the reply from London. But this fellow is delivered the telegram at Suez on his way to London. He is from Kashmir, and I know the name, but now government has some imagination of bringing out commemorative and definitive stamps. And I would say they are politically correct than theoretically conscious or analytically rigorous. Let us add some meaning to this telegram thing. The speed. Why urgency in purification? You need to come back and take a prachitya, purify your body, cancel your onward journey. Now the question whether their fellow has come back or what, he has come back and he has done some kind of a jugaad, did prachitya. The question is, what defines caste? Pollution. What defines pollution? Time duration. Is it not urgent for a polluted body to purify it? To put it simply, can a polluted body wait, accumulate pollution in itself, impurity in itself? Suppose I am touched today, can I really purify my body tomorrow? Is it possible? I have no idea. Sundar Sarukai says, there are certain castes are professionally hygienic. They want to take bath immediately, whether it is touched or not. But just ask somebody knowledgeable why it is so urgent to purify the body. Why telegram? Why not ordinary postcard? Government of India may not think about it, but we have to actually make an additional meaning and extract the additional meaning out of it. So this is one problem. There are narratives that the fellow who is traveling from Ahmedabad to Mumbai is taking bath at every station to Mumbai. Now it is not when you have got devices, now you have certain devices to purify your body if in case you have. The point is that, the fellow was traveling in the train. Look at his phenomenological moves. He is converting every passenger into an untouchable, isn't it? That's why he's getting out of the train at every station and purifying body and going. Now, this is not possible now. If there are a lot of modifications have taken place and people are now adjusting. They're sticking but still adjusting. As in one of the displayed figure, you find that there's a contradiction. That we must fight against untouchability. Untouchability was a poison. Fight and was, how can you accommodate both? Government imagination, I don't know, but let's not comment on it. But our job through this exhibition is to make more meaning out of it, which is actually very, very resonating to actual practices of the people, like telegram. Now, I don't know, your email now is faster than anything else. The moment you commit, you are a deviant to a caste order. Now there's WhatsApp, there are communication conferences now. People must be asking whether you have taken bath or not. Whom did you contact today? Maybe. But this is one a way of actually using telegram to consolidate your hold on caste order. Those days. Now it may not be possible. It is not possible. The people in Bombay, local Bombay, they are helpless. But they take bath after they come back. And I have said that this is archaeology of untouchability. Now this is one aspect of telegram. Now you have Britishers keep sending telegrams. But Ambedkar has a different use of telegram. One use of telegram is to consolidate caste, the other one is to free yourself from caste. So during the 30s and the 40s, Ambedkar is actually using telegram as the medium to communicate to the people what is the line of action, strategies, and he was getting regular updates about the atrocities happened during the temple entry movement in Nasik and Satyagraha and Mahad Satyagraha. Now, so I think telegram is a double-edged sword. I mean, it's a double-edged sword in the sense that, it helps people to consolidate and it helps others to dismantle it. And just the academic point I would like to make to the post-colonial theorists, if they are interested, I think they do not see the seamless continuum of this telegram. In the colonial configuration of power, British colonial state, Britishers are using telegram to actually control the subject population. You are using, in the local configuration of power, telegram to control your own members from being deviant to the caste order. I have no idea whether the post-colonial theorists have really paid any attention to this. Just find out. And I stand to be corrected if you bring that to my notice. So this is the second quick point about the academics. Now the third important point is, and then I'll close there, I think. Post was actually an important intervention in the emancipation of Dalit from the caste structure. Before the introduction of the telecommunication system, the Mahars from the Western Maharashtra, and Ambedkar was from that caste, they were being used as the mobile letterbox. I'm just using the contemporary metaphor to describe their status. What do I mean by that? They were used as the messenger from one place to another to take the messages of the feudal lords from one village to another village. Messages about marriages, other cultural functions, messages about birth and death. All the important things were being conveyed through this fellow. And obviously he was a trusted person. But it was not only, it was kind of a drudgery. He had to do it as a part of his feudal duty almost 24/7, irrespective of the problems on the way. The moment this was introduced, he disappeared. So post and telegraph, in a way, actually is attacking caste-based occupations. And now a Dalit fellow is a postman, and he was carrying the messages himself in person. Now he is controlling whose letter has to be delivered, on what basis, and on what urgency. I mean, he was carrying that message on his head. Now Ambedkar appears as a masked head. That's the difference. Should we be celebrating? And let's come back to that very sensitive point, and I'll close there. I have one more point, but that doesn't have any meaning. Now, why Ambedkar's exhibition? This question may be lurking in your mind. Why? Because he's privileging Ambedkar's exhibition. Of course, there are other One objection, which is a very sophisticated objection taken by the post-colonialist again, is that, it is very linear ways of actually projecting somebody. Ambedkar as in dhoti, suddenly in three-piece suit on the postcard, isn't it, on the stamp? He is not shown in any other attire, only in the modernist image. Now, the non-linear reading of postal history of caste, is it deliberate exclusion of certain heroes who are not the part of the mainstream? Now you have seen that there are other heroes in whose name, in whose honor the commemorative stamp was issued. There is a politics to that. But the point is, why Ambedkar dominates? Is it arbitrary? It is somebody's special design? Or it is just somebody's gimmick or somebody's political gimmick? It would be very unfair, and as they say, it would be epistemically unfair to actually condemn Ambedkar to this linear ways of projecting his image as somebody who is dominating the history of caste through post. Why Western Maharashtra? Why West? Because it is Mumbai where you get all the innovations, education, post, everything, telegraph, railways, everything, isn't it? And the Mahars are unskilled laborers, large in size, nothing to do in the village. They are pushed out from the village. They come to Mumbai. And they take to education and then progress. Now you have to be analytically fair to understand historical unfolding of Ambedkar became an exemplary figure. Isn't it? And likewise you can do to other scholars as well. So linear progress culminating into Ambedkar as a figure appearing on the letters and postcard is something which is historically unavoidable. And you are philosophers, I can debate that point. There's no problem about it. So this is one problem that we have to sort out and say that, it is not a deliberate design. Of course, there's politics, but it's not deliberate design to project Ambedkar. And it's not a stimuli response situation as well. We didn't stop you, why didn't you come? No, this is not the answer. I have already seen, I have heard obliquely that, on post Ambedkar, on postal stamps Ambedkar, Bharat Ratna Ambedkar. Why? So these are not emotive issues, these are basically analytical. You can do justice to Ambedkar through reading this post exhibition differently. Last point is this about one stamp is about Satyagraha. The Mahar Satyagraha, the water Satyagraha for water, 1927, March 1927. And this stamp was brought out very significantly on 1990, the birth centenary of Dr. Ambedkar. Now, this act, historical act, is infused with meaning which is emancipatory. To show that Ambedkar's stamp is going to state that how natural equality is important. I mean, the dogs and cats and animals can drink water from the tank. Why not human being? So there is an element of moral equality. He is not saying that dog and cats and donkeys should not drink. He didn't say that. He said that we should also be allowed to drink water from the tank. So this stamp suggests something which is very deep, philosophically very deep, which is to say that you have a natural rights. Everybody wants to drink water in order to survive. And that right you are denying means you are actually violating a much deeper right, which actually makes your life so flourishing. Caste is anti-flourishing life. That is the message you get from that stamp. And this intensification of normative order, as they say, dignity, and as he calls Manuski, dignity, it is intensified across time period. What do I mean by this? That as the stamp suggests, that struggle was launched in 1927 for water, and that stamp is carrying his image, 91. So 2791, water problem exists, untouchability exists, discrimination exists. Therefore, untouchability, we want untouchability to be to push into the background in the past was. It unfortunately continues to be a problem. Therefore, I think, I don't know whether they are actually bringing any stamps now. People don't use letters now. And Shanta Kumar was so generous to get us a center page, Sundar and myself, in his newspaper. People are writing to him and to us from Karnataka, coastal Karnataka. I don't have any caste. Can you suggest how can I get my caste? Writing. So I think there is some urge, inner urge, to stick to your own consciousness. And let us imagine, therefore, India, not through this, but through something else. I must stop here. Thank you so much for your patience and hearing.
Thank you. Really fascinating exhibition. I really loved it. I have written letters when I was in school, but not much. So it was really great to see also the earlier stamps and all of that. This question, Professor Kumar or even Guru was talking about telegram as means of communication and how that sort of used during colonial time and also post-colonial. So I was thinking about when I was checking the archive, I saw that a lot of the postcards were used for sending invitations or as informationals or sort of like newsletters, like how you have email newsletters now. So I was wondering what kind of function that played in consolidating caste, because a lot of the postcards were by upper caste, advertising about some caste function or something like that. So I was wondering what do you think about that?
So you see, the telegram could reach only certain specific locations in the country. The postcard would go to almost all places. So when, for instance, these associations started bringing out their publication newsletters, they would, so first of all, the postcards would be used to tell people that we are going to meet next year in this place. Then the postcard would be used to communicate to them the consensus of that annual meeting. So these regular correspondences, these routine correspondences, right, made people feel as a corporate entity, right? So before this, before the advent of a census and the new transportation communication technologies, I could be a Brahman in a village, and my privilege as a Brahman or privileges would not depend on how many crore Brahmins are there in the country. I derive my privileges by virtue of being a Brahman. But now, after the census, after counting and all this, people now became conscious of the figures, and they wanted to consolidate their population figures to say, well, I'm not alone. I am, these many crore people in Indians, in the country. So the postal department played a major role, and trains allowed them to meet every year, but postal department allowed them to reach people who could not come, because everybody could not afford to come there, right? So I think it played a major role in consolidating caste as a, I mean, it first allowed you to reimagine the local jati as a Akhil Bharatvarshi jati, right? And then it also helped you make that imagination little more concrete, right? And then final point that once this happened, so if you look at the archive, the most well represented in the archive are the trading communities, because they corresponded much more than any other community. And next come the Brahmins and then the Kshatriyas. Now, after a while, the Dalit community, when they gradually acquired education and also the capacity to launch their own newsletters, etc., because to mail all these, letters, you needed access to printing and these things. So it took a while for them to catch up, right? And even though postal services made communications simpler and cheaper, but it was extremely expensive at that time. I mean, an email today is much more cheaper even after you take into account, inflation compared to a postcard 100 years ago. So it took a while for other communities to catch up and use this. And then we see that they are using this not to tell stories about, which were until then told, but they started sharing stories about atrocities. They started sharing stories about, the importance of education, etc. So I think, it played a role both to first consolidate caste, but it eventually allowed other communities to launch anti-caste, communication as well. So I'll stop here and go to the next question. I think there was a question over here.
Firstly, congratulations on this fantastic exhibition, and thank you for bringing up such important topics and introducing fresh thoughts into philately, which has generally been an elite hobby, so to say. And hopefully this will, it has certainly inspired me to become a more active philatelist now, to just look back at my own collection and what more stories that can be told. My question is more about the contemporary and future of philately as an archive. Politically, if you go to a post office now, there is no definitive of Gandhi, Nehru or Ambedkar. Or even Gandhi is missing from the postcard. Ambedkar never made it to the postcard. So, and there has been, of late in my visits to the post office, I've never seen the frenzy around one particular post stamp as that of the Ram Mandir stamp. There seems to have been some unwritten diktat that every postman and postwoman has to market it to in every village. And they're proudly distributing this. So the postal mechanism has become more and more political without the knowledge of the large part of the country who doesn't use it. Although there's another India who uses still the postcard, right? Especially the armed services who seem to use it. So how do you see people, say, reclaiming this institution and the machinery, and what is the future of such material now, contemporary relevance, and how do you see the future going? Would it serve the same purpose as what the older material has served for us, right? How do you...
The contemporary philatelic output will also be a very useful source of understanding the politics and and contemporary history. Just to go to the specific Ram temple thing, it's not a frenzy which was spontaneous. It was created. It is not something which happened on its own. So you see, the political use of stamps began in 1967, 66, when Indira Gandhi came to power. She bifurcated the definitive series into a definitive series and then special definitive series. See, until then, until 66, our definitive series was meant to share public policy. It was meant to share a shared culture and to share a future vision for the country. So 1956, we launched the second 5-year plan, but a year before that, a whole new series, the definitive series was released to advertise that plan. See, at that time, our literacy levels were not high, news media penetration was not high. So these stamps, these new definitive stamps, crores were meant to advertise the plan, but it was done 1 year before the plan. So this was a space which was used exclusively by the Nehru government to share its vision for the country. When Indira Gandhi came to power, definities continued to play this role, but she created a special definitive series, and for the first time, personalities featured on that. Jawaharlal Nehru and Mahatma Gandhi, right? So the politicization began then, and gradually the share of public policy in stamps kept decreasing, and the personalities increased. Right? So now, once you do not have anything to show for what you are doing and you're not thinking about the future, you remind people about the past stories. And this is what all political parties have done. So this politicization which we are seeing now has its roots in 1966. In fact, as I said, Ambedkar was not included in the calendar for 1966, but then a stamp was issued. Chauhan, who was a major leader at that time in Maharashtra, he reminded Indira Gandhi that the whole country is now gearing up for the 75th anniversary of Dr. Ambedkar. So the government should also associate with that. Now, within 1 month, the Indira Gandhi government brought out a stamp on Ambedkar, right? And then she also later on included Savarkar also in this commemorative series. So the political use of stamps began then, and it has grown ever since. In 2008, 2009, the politicization reached its culmination when the entire definitive series was only special definitive, and it was focused only on personalities. See, until 2002, 2003, there was a special definitive. But 2008-9, the Manmohan Singh government brought out a definitive series with only personalities. They could have brought out a series on, RTI, RTE, and, Manrega, etc. These were important initiatives, and they could have showcased them, but they didn't. But their stamps in the 10 years did not showcase any public policy. They showcased only personalities. So I think, this politicization which you are seeing now, has a very long, history, and a lot of in fact, every political party has contributed to it. But we need to look at is why was the institution of Philatelic Advisory Committee, why did the Philatelic Advisory Committee not put its foot down and say that we have to preserve the sanctity of definitive series as a space where we share public policy? So we need to look at the institutional weakness which allowed the politicization to happen.
It's great to see Professor Gopal Guru in Bangalore, and it's not a question, but it's probably an urge of a true student of his to listen more from his short but very, very insightful speech. One is when he's taking dig at post-colonial scholarship through the idea of telegram. So you suggested that upper castes are trying to control their own caste mates through telegram. On the other hand, colonial state is not interested in the issue of caste. And then probably the third front is also there with Baba Saheb Ambedkar, who is trying to, through communication, who is trying to dismantle caste. So there are post-colonials. I just want to know whether I am reading you correctly or not. So post-colonials will argue that through these technological innovations, caste is getting solidified, but they will ignore the fact that old caste is getting more solidified through their own caste mates. So am I reading you correctly? That is one. And if you can speak more on exemplar, the idea of exemplar, and whether we can see Ambedkar becoming more and more universal in our gradually in the post-colonial times. So if you can speak more on that. And third is, while finishing your speech, you referred to something, some news came and people are writing about their maybe discomfort, if I'm reading it correctly. So trying to comment on this whole exhibition and so on. If you can speak more on that also.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. I think I don't think you require any certificate from me that you read me correctly. I think you're fine. I have a regular problem continuous problem with the post-colonial theorists, because they have focused on what the imperialists did. I mean, the stamp that was displayed there also displays the imperialist mission of the colonialist. The stamps are going everywhere across continents. The British stamps are going everywhere. So there is a purpose. I mean, the postal department also works as an advertisement department. You advertise, and you also prove that you have arrived in terms of power. And stamp is a symbol of power. But you are using the same symbol, ironically, to perpetuate casteism, isn't it? I mean, now whether that was really correct or not, this is not the question of moral judgment. And I would say Britishers partly were indifferent to what was happening through this communication across caste and communities. But they're concerned about when it actually exploded into some big proportion in 1857. So that's a different story. But the point that we have to keep in mind is that the post-colonial theorists have a very skewed reading of social reality. They take, they would say the linear ways of reading history, even including the history of caste through postal department, is a history which has an easy flow and doesn't really capture complexity. It might really capture totality, but not complexity. I'm making 2 points now. We require some fine nuanced distinction between what is complexity and what is totality. If I'm a foundationalist, I would go into totality. If I'm a subaltern deconstructionist, I would entertain complexity, and then I will talk about non-linear development of historical figures coming up. So you have Uda Devi, you have Pasi, and all that is there. We have no objection to that. But those who are from margin to margin, they have this regular problem, projecting one figure as one single salutary figure. And therefore, exemplar is, whether you like or not, is unavoidable historical result. And that exemplar is actually created as an exemplar by people who want to really rally around that, both intellectually and culturally and psychologically. That's why you require statues, you require books. Now people have collected coins in the name of Ambedkar. They are not circulating what is happening. They are not doing anything about that. They are just worshipping those coins. And so I think, so the point that he is raising, what is the way out? I mean, you can't celebrate it. You have to tell, decode the meaning. Like the one, 1927, Mahar Satyagraha. Even today, people don't get water. They have to struggle. There's a Chaudhar and there's Chakwada in Rajasthan. Same. There's a continuity. In Chakwada in Rajasthan, you people have to fight for, So when I say that the stamp symbolically signifies the intensification of the problem across time and space, 1927, 1991. And I'm not expecting the government to really decode it so deeply. They have their own politics to attend to. So this is, why can't we really go with the stamps, take Vikas and others, and tell people, look here, they are not redundant, outdated things. Though you have very fast moving communication through email and all that. But email will not really tell you what is Satyagraha. There's no image, unless you really project the image and decode it for them. You still require the stamp and the material object. You feel, you touch material object and you feel that you are very close to reality. Because the value of a reality on the screen is not permanent. You might push the wrong button and your file is deleted. But stamp still remains there, as he has very, very laboriously curated. So exhibition actually brings materiality and reality together. And therefore, I think you should tell people, look here, this was it. You should really show this in the education to the children. Exhibition has to be taken to the colleges and schools. If you really think that this is worth doing a job or project, you should take it. Savitri Bai's stamp is an amazing stamp with lot of loaded meaning in it. And this is the real picture, not the one which is improvised. There will be a lot of response to that. So you multiply his experiment, his exhibition. Thank you. Anything else? Did I miss? Exemplar is the initial condition, not the essential condition in Ambedkar's thing. What do I mean by that? Ambedkar's ultimate is Attadipa, everybody is an exemplar. Everybody is enlightened himself and there's light in everybody else. So exemplar becomes meaningless when everybody is exemplar. But we really require exemplar because you do not discover one exemplar in ourselves. We always look, light for our imagination is located in others' imagination, not in ours. You are actually outsourcing your own. Anyway.
Hi, thank you so much for your enlightening points. Two slightly different questions. One, especially in the colonial era, how do you see the role of the postal system in terms of its impact on language? And language, by language I mean, for example, if you were a rural Maharashtrian who was communicating with somebody in rural Uttar Pradesh, what is the mode of communication? If it has to travel from Marathi to Hindi and comes back, so how do you, one, unpack that? And number two, how do you see the role of the postman? You've pointed a little bit about it. How do we sort of unpack the role of the postman as an interpreter in a relatively, for the lack of a better term, less literate society at that point of time? Yeah.
So there's been some work on how the introduction of postal services and railways led to the convergence of food grain prices. Now, so a very large proportion of communication which has survived is actually correspondence between traders, right? And these traders would correspond from Manipur to Delhi, Bombay, Surat to Calcutta, so some part of this correspondence was actually between the Gujarati and Marwadi traders who were spread out across the country, but a very significant part was also advertising of their own products. So you see that English was not the dominant mode of inter-linguistic zone conversations, right? Interestingly, Hindi was used pretty often, much more frequently than you would expect it's any day. So I showed you a postcard from 1954, Sikere, where he writes in Hindi, Choti Jaat ka gola, badi jaat ka kola, right? From Pakistan, from Peshawar, Rawal, in fact, as far as Balochistan border, Balochistan border, we have a large body of, correspondence which is in Devanagari script, and largely you can call it Hindi, right? Now, interestingly there, the Punjabi traders, when they send postcards out, they would send in Hindi, but they would say, when you reply, could you please mention your address in English or Urdu, right? So there is, on the one hand, there is correspondence, a very widespread use of Devanagari script across the country. As for instance, the traders from Tiptur, I think, going, sending material to North India. So their correspondence used to be in Devanagari. But now, what would be interesting to find out is who was helping them write these postcards in Devanagari and Hindi, right? That's one thing. The other thing is that postcards also, communication also led to standardization of language, right? So standardization of language happened in two ways. First of all, in spellings, and secondly, in the modes of expression, right? So you see that, traders across the country very quickly acquired a particular mode of introducing themselves, right? And so that was the way traders, spoke to each other. It's not that this was the way they spoke to each other in their localities, but this was what they thought was appropriate when they sent a postcard from Rawalpindi to Calcutta. So therefore, it led to that standardization as well, and printing played a role. Primary school played a role there as well, and so therefore that standardization, that is one part. The second of your question was about the postman. The postman was a very, very important figure. Now I'll connect from where Professor Guru left. So traditionally, the job of conveying messages was given to people from certain communities. Now, there are 2 points here. The first is, of course, the everyday communication between the local communities. But at the high level, at the higher echelons of administration, it was often that Brahmins were entrusted the job of conveying messages from court A to court B. A lot of, medieval Nawab Sultans, even they used Brahmins because they knew that that Brahmins would be guaranteed the life, security of life. Right? So firstly, security. Secondly, he can travel freely. Right? And he can also use courtly expressions. So on one hand, there was this, divide of everyday, village to village communication being entrusted to people from a particular community. Now it's not only from village to village, but even within villages, certain communities had the traditional role to announce things, right? That's it. Now and then we have high correspondence happening. The advent of British rule and the advent of modern post offices, etc., meant that See, a Brahmin would never become the local postman in the traditional scheme, but after the advent of British system, you needed a little bit of knowledge of English, etc., to become that, and there was some kind of entrance procedure, interview, something. So that rid that traditional job of its caste stigma. So now a Brahmin can become a constable because he has cleared an exam. So it is still linked to his learning. I'm not a constable because I am constable because I've cleared an exam. I am postman or postmaster because of this. So I mean, if you see a lot of these upper castes who were not into communications, they became this. Now, postman was a very important personality. He was the face of the Indian government. He would not only bring the letter, he would also read the letter. Right? There were people who were employed to write letters. Right? He would read the letter, then he will take down the response and communicate. But one very funny thing which I found funny was that the schools, colleges will give their annual report cards on postcards. So even before you learnt about your grades, the postman knew the exact scores, and the whole village would know it. And so your parents did not know how to read and write, but the postman would read that you failed or passed, etc. Right? So there was no privacy of scores, that you have these, that you get great scores in your email box. So the postman was the face. Every new scheme, it is the postman who would advertise it. So postman was the face of the Indian state and the non-confrontational face. You see, the local thana was always here, right? You had fears about primary education, whether they are, destroying our faith or culture. But with postman, nobody had enmity, right? So therefore, postman was one of the most important and perhaps the least studied government official. So as you know, I think we need to pay much more attention to this office of postman, the kind of tasks he was entrusted. He would not only carry letters, he would carry anti-malaria tablets. He would carry school textbooks, all kinds of things with him to the village.
My question is about the absence of material from the South in the exhibition and in your discussion. Is it simply because of the nature of the archive that material from the South has not been preserved? Because it just leaves a kind of vacuum. I'm just curious about what was happening in South India.
Right. So there is material from South. There are two things. So first of all, material from West India survived much more than that, and because major dealers are based in Western India and they can interpret the Hindi, Gujarati, Marathi much more. So they come across something, so they would keep it, and so this is one reason why the quantity of material that is survived is a little skewed in that direction. I did show some specimen here. I should have maybe shown more, but you see, some of them which you saw were in Hindi from South India. So you see, there are two postcards from Hyderabad, but both of them were in Hindi. There was a postcard from Hassan, it was in Hindi. Right? There was this magazine ki wrapper of Tamil Harijan that was in Tamil. So, which is why I said that I received a skewed sample. I have to go back and reweigh the sample, right? And that's important. But I did ask a lot of my senior collectors in South India, has anybody kept a record of the Justice Party correspondence or, postal material on Justice Party? I did not receive positive response there. So it seems, okay, now there's this second point. The social composition of the body of collectors and dealers has to be understood. The social composition was largely upper caste, right? And so therefore, I'm not trying to promote my exhibition, but I don't recall a solo exhibition on Ambedkar from a postal perspective before I did in 22. And this again perhaps is the first exhibition of caste from the postal perspective. It's not that something, it's very, so people didn't really keep track of this. The way the Gandhi stamps are celebrated, worshipped, the other material is not. So when I started, collecting, when I said I have to tell stories and complete the apps, I realized that most people have not foregrounded this material. The Gandhi album would be there in the drawing room, right? But not this will be lying somewhere there. So I think, because of that, there's been a neglect because of social composition, and which is why, we talk about, I didn't mention perhaps there, as the number of some of the people from Dalit communities became senior officials, you see more special covers coming out on Ambedkar and others, right? So it's important to, have representation from different communities and parts of the countries to have more representative sample, because the community of collectors is an extremely small community actually, right? They might be actually only 1,000 active collectors, serious collectors in the country, and invariably almost all of them are from upper caste. It's not because of any accident. It's just that the opportunity cost of collecting stamps is extremely high, extraordinarily high. Right? So you have to, first of all, have access to higher education, A, and B, you need to have resources to invest in that, and C, you need space. Building an archive at home is extremely expensive. I don't keep them here, I keep them in Kanpur, somewhere where I have more space. So therefore, because of material constraints, the upper caste were more represented in this, and perhaps they didn't seem it fit to dedicate a section of collection of caste and other things. So South India also, again, it seems that, people didn't pay attention to this dimension. So I find it very difficult to, get material from South India on caste issues. So I'm trying, but some of the material that happens to be in Hindi. But I did in the panel outside, I did showcase stamps on the Justice Party leader and other Dravid movement leaders there. But yes, we need, which is why now philately is going out as a hobby. It's fading out. It is now going to emerge, hopefully, as a site, as an archival site, right? And we need trained archivists, historians to pay attention to this. If we cannot, as long as, philatelists as a hobby group are controlling this, it will not really be able to address the kind of concerns. A trained archivist is going to pay attention to the issue of representation there. Am I sufficiently covering that period? He will go out and hunt. And because I happen to be from social sciences, I did try to, make it a point to hunt for material from across Kashmir, all the way to, in fact, Kashmir didn't figure here. One of the reasons that I've got just 100 frames, Punjab didn't figure here, but there's material from Punjab and Kashmir as well. In fact, for Harjan Sevak Sangh, we can do an entire exhibition just on Harjan Sevak Sangh, or, some of the Dalit newspapers. So, and look at, this archive needs to be understood from multiple perspectives. Where, where is this Dalit, group's newspaper from Kanpur being held, So from Kanpur, it is going to Rajkot to a particular locality. It is not going to every locality in Rajkot. It is going to Valmiki, Papadi there, right? So we need to unpack these, complex postal products from multiple dimensions. Where was this newsletter printed in Kanpur, right? Who were the deputy editors, copy editors, etc., who was giving them news, and were they getting, government advertisements? Right? Sometimes I see Dalit newspapers with a box saying you can advertise here, right? And so therefore, they're not getting as many advertisements, for instance. So it tells you that. So I think we need to pay, and one of the reasons why I've been, conducting these exhibitions, even though I'm not a trained archivist or historian, is that to bring to light the importance of engaging with this material, right? I'd like to invite the archivist community, the historians, to come forward and take interest in this very valuable archive, without which I think, we cannot understand the contemporary Indian state.
Thank you to Professor Gopal Guru and Professor Vikas Kumar for bringing today's session to BIC, and thank you to the audience for your time and questions.